All right, John, we're on here recording. Thank you for your time to do this interview, man. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
So, obviously, the paranormal world. How would you say it's changed from when you started to how it is now?
Well, years ago, even going back just 7 to 10 years, it wasn't so much out in the forefront like it is today. Back then, you really didn't talk that much about it. People were a lot more cautious and guarded with talking about it. I mean, gosh, you couldn't even really talk about being a paranormal investigator, let alone getting involved with any of the demonology end of it, where today, due to the TV shows and radio shows and everything and the hype of a lot of the haunted locations, I think it brought a lot of it out into the forefront. But I do look at it as a double-edged sword, so to speak, where, you have a lot of people that are out there that are very interested. There are good researchers and people doing it out there, but today you got a lot of people that are thrill seekers that are interested in this field. And what I mean by that is the fact that, you got people going into locations and, investigating, and just, the fact of going into residential homes makes me very nervous, because a lot of times, they don't follow through. They just go in and do their EVPs and photographs and, just totally drop it right after they do all that. So again, with things coming to the forefront, we have some positives with things in the forefront with it. And just like with anything else out there, you're going to have the negative aspect that's going to follow with it.
All right, so would you say TV, as we were stating earlier, it's helped and it's hurt? And I don't know if you read or not, but I guess over the weekend, somebody desecrated Lizzie Borden's grave.
No, I did not know that.
Yes, that was... I found out about that today. I read an article online about it, that people spray painted over her grave.
Well, here again, this is exactly, many of us here, the destruction that takes place, in these historical locations, these graves. And these are the people that are the thrill seekers that do these things. And they go in and they damage and hurt the fact of letting, if you're going to go in, you want to do some research and photography work or EVPs or history research, that's one thing. But going in and causing any type of destruction and, breaking these stones or spray painting them, to me, it's something that bothers me tremendously, that these things are even occurring and happening. And it's more so from these people that are just out there thrill-seeking and just doing these things, where it just, hurts the rest of us out there in the paranormal field when people do things like that. Look at the fact of the mansion down south that they lit on fire because they were in there investigating, and they burned down a historical mansion. So these things bother me tremendously, that they occur and they are on the uprise, and it's unfortunate. But again, it's just like anything else, the more things that are out in the forefront, whether it's in the paranormal field or any field, it gets more recognition and more people are going to come out of the woodwork, trying to get involved with it.
Okay, that, kind of leads into my other question. How do you feel like if people are doing a private investigation, at a home or a business, and they start posting, we got an investigation in such and such a town tonight?
I look at that again, too. If it's a public place, and a restaurant or a theater or what have you, and if it's known to be haunted, no big deal. And with residential homes, I think you do have to be a little bit more guarded and careful. It depends on what the family is interested in. Because, Chris, as well as I, a lot of people, go public, and they talk about it. So I would look at that a little bit differently. But if a family, a residential case, they're not interested in any publicity, they're not interested in, any hoopla, then, respect those people. And I'm noticing today a lot of these individuals aren't doing that. They're going ahead and just posting that stuff and putting it out there. So again, I look at it as anything else out there, not just with the paranormal field. And if a person chooses, to be public and let the paranormal activity be known on the location, then that's fine. If a person chooses to remain private, then I think people need to respect that.
Okay, yeah, that's, my other question too is, I noticed a trend, as I'm sure you have, where, as you stated earlier, groups will go in, and before they do any review of anything, they start telling the client, what they found or what they think's there.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts about that?
I totally disagree with that, and my reasonings are, it takes time to go in and investigate. Unless you walk into a house or a building and you got stuff flying around, or there's major activity you're getting, then that's one thing. But when you go in and you're trying to evaluate, you need to talk to people, you need to find out history, you need to do a lot of research before I feel anybody should make any type of conclusion of what's going on a piece of property. Because, again, people seem to go in and just want to start, talking about there's devils and there's demons in a lot of these cases. And I disagree with that, because a lot of that isn't a truth. So you got to be careful when you're trying to evaluate a piece of property and start telling people that there's all kinds of things going on, when in fact you just can't make an evaluation that quick. I totally disagree with that. So I need to, most people, sincere people that are interested in the paranormal field, take your time. Get involved with doing what you need to do to try and get something resolved, and then you present your evidence after you do your evaluations and you talk to a lot of people. That's the correct way, as far as I'm concerned, to do an investigation.
Okay, that's exactly how I feel, and it seems, I don't know your thoughts, but I noticed it says since TV, a lot more private homes that want the attention, they'll have like group after group after group to come out.
Mm-hmm.
And, have you noticed if there's, your calls have increased, and, like anybody that's been in a while, you do research and you start saying, hey, wait a minute, I'm like the fourth group they're contacting.
Very common today, and I think that's a trend that we're all dealing with at this point, where a lot of times I could get a phone call, from an individual where they've had 4, 5, 6 groups out there. They've had different opinions given to them, that they had the portal to hell in their house, there's devils, there's demons in there. With all of this crazy stuff, that these people are coming out with, just being in there one night, makes it extremely, it makes it to a point, Chris, where it's hard to try to evaluate something once people are told that, because then that information is sitting there with them, and now they're petrified because they think they got devils and demons rampant through their house. So all of us, anyone that's been around investigating for any length of time, I think we're all dealing with that now. It makes it twice as hard to evaluate something and to try to figure out exactly what's going on. And a lot of times these poor people are to the point where they don't know who to believe anymore. They don't know which way to take a further approach, if you will, on what to do. And a lot of times it takes me a lot of work to sit down and explain what they need to do, or what needs to be done to try to, rectify the situation, or, to get the paranormal activity to stop, or to get things to quiet down.
Yeah, exactly. That's how, we were leading to earlier, that you say, that so many groups seem to go in, just do the investigation, tell the client this is what we found, and they leave them hanging. You know, I, like you, don't agree with that. They want answers and help. If they feel something's there, they just don't want to hear it. They want to know how you're going to help them after.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's a difficult thing for each and every one of us that gets involved with these types of cases. You know, and what can you really do about it? Because a lot of times people will, ask individuals to go on the internet and just look up something, and will contact people without really digging in and start to research to see what they can find out about, that particular group or these particular people. How long have they been around? What have they been associated with? And again, it's something that we've seen escalate, over the past 7 to 10 years, where there's so many paranormal groups out there today that probably makes it very difficult for an individual to decide on whom they're going to call, and bring in to investigate.
Now, in your opinion, how somebody looking for, a legit paranormal group, how many years would you say a group or person should have that a homeowner or client should look for and say, okay, they have enough experience that they could help me in all aspects, not just come in with a camera and a voice recorder?
I think the key factor isn't so much the time length as much as it is looking to see what is this person or what is this group accomplished, what places have they gone to, whom, are they affiliated with, who do they work with. Those are key essential things to check into and to see, what is substantial. Because today, we all are very aware of the fact that, a paranormal group can be formed, and it can be people that have been together, 10, 15 years, and then all of a sudden they split. Very common thing we all see today. Then that group splits, and it just gets totally chaotic. But you still could have a person that has a brand new group that's been in the paranormal field for a while, and they're a decent researcher, but then it's unfortunate they just start tying in with other people out there, and it ends up, hurting their credibility.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, like you said, I mean, groups, people, the founders and stuff will always be there, and, you've been in it well over 40 years, and, everybody knows that, your late uncle, Ed, basically, in my opinion, him and his wife were at the forefront. They weren't afraid to step up and say, hey, this is what's going on, and don't be afraid, and they marched on.
Which is, again, as we all know, Ed and Lorraine Warren took their beatings over the years, criticized for each and everything that they got involved with and the way they would handle things. I was there. I seen it. I watched it when it would happen. But, again, I have to look at it from this perspective. If they didn't do what they did, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing today. They took those chances. They went out to the forefront. They would speak publicly on, different shows and radio shows and things, bringing the information to the forefront. So again, just like any of us, you go out into that forefront, including myself, you're going to get criticized over things. You're going to get criticized over a lot of the different things you do, especially when you're dealing with the paranormal genre.
Yeah, exactly. And, like we and you stated in the past a couple times, I remember my grandparents and your uncle and Lorraine were good friends starting at 8 years old. In church, people would stare. And as you said, people going after them in the diner. Back then it was, as I'm sure you hear it, is, oh God, here comes the ghost hunters. Some people would come up very intrigued, and a lot of people were like, oh no, I'm not going near them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Where today it's so different. Back then it was revered differently and it was looked at differently. But that's one thing, I could take that step back and look at. Ed and Lorraine always stood their ground. And when they were involved with the case, and I've seen them go in, I've been with them on many, many cases over the years, what their evaluations were, what they would do, how they would do it. And I still follow that format. Take your time evaluating, take your time trying to figure out what's going on. And then I would watch, the reverse happen if somebody went public. They would just, come up with a million and one things, and I would see it and watch it and go, these people weren't even in that house, so how could they really say? Because we know today, with the internet, people hide behind that keyboard and they just say whatever they want, they post whatever they want, and it's not really based on any facts.
Yeah, and that's where I think, one of the things, your thoughts on research back then when you started, you would have to go to the town halls. You would have to sit down and talk with the people. There was no internet where you could just sit and do a couple clicks and get your information, which I think a lot of people rely on too much. Go to the town halls. They don't do what you used to have to do.
Well, even today, Chris, we know for a fact. I mean, many a times you can start doing things on the internet, researching things, trying to get information. And then if you do go to your local locations, your historians or town hall, you can find that information was inaccurate that was posted on the internet.
Oh, yeah, valid point. That's why, people, love to hear from you and talk, because you know better than any of us what it takes to be, good at this and great. It takes...
Yeah, to me, it's key and it's important, not to rely just on, well, somebody told me or I heard this. It's good to get that information, but it's also good to always go and, do the old-fashioned way, the legwork, the footwork out there, and dig in and see what you can find out, because there's been many a times where, a homeowner, well, so-and-so lived here or this happened here, and you can't find anything to back that. So again, to me it's important to still do that and still go behind the scenes to see what you can find out from historical reference or from a lot of other avenues of speaking to people that have been around for many years in one location. Because that's your best source of information to be able to dig into things to see what is correct and what isn't, as far as, quite a few things that, people will tell you about a piece of property.
Yeah, exactly. Like you said, start with the basics is, advice you'd give to anybody. I personally, I don't rely on the internet. I'll do a little bit, but we'll still have, depending what area of the state, like you said, go to the town hall. And this historians, in my opinion, I find are the best source of information, because they got their nose right in that book, and a lot of times they'll just tell you off the top of their head what you're looking for.
Absolutely. Absolutely, and I agree 150% with that, because I still do that to this day. And when dealing with people in the historical societies or, people that are right there, they usually have the correct information, and a lot of times they can give it to you, because a lot of times I'll repeat things or, ask them different questions, and they'll go, John, that's not a fact and that's not a truth. Let's go back into historical records and look. And that's a key factor and a very important thing as far as I'm concerned. That is one of our best sources of information.
Yes, and that's, in my opinion, that's one thing a lot of people today don't bother to take the time to do. They'll type up what they find on the internet, and as you said, property records, they're not updated, that often.
No, and again, too, not only that, Chris, a lot of the old historical information isn't there. It's just not on the internet as far as being able to dig into things. You have to go in, to town halls and look into some of the registries and, look at some of the documentation, because it's just not there. And it's not on the internet. So, again, a lot of times you got to go in and cross-reference books and cross-reference pieces of property, because you could be dealing with a house that's on maybe, an acre piece of property, but the original piece of property could have been 1,000 acres. So you have to take a lot of that stuff into consideration when evaluating and looking at anything.
Yeah, that's, definitely excellent advice. And, everybody, again, start with the start with a historical society, call them, and I find a lot of times if you just call them, they'll give you the basics, but if you show them you're taking the time and effort to meet with them, they'll sit down and give you all the time you want because they're just as passionate about it as you are to help the client.
Absolutely. And a key thing with a lot of them too, Chris, they're interested in the correct information getting out there. They're very much interested in that. So I had found over the years a lot of them will take their time and go through everything and cross-reference it and show it to you. What is in those old ledgers, or it's amazing to me on how they can look at one ledger and then they'll go into the archives and pull another ledger out to cross-reference it. I've had that happen many different times, and then go back to a homeowner and say, gee, this is what I got, and this is the information, and what you were told was inaccurate. That's happened many a times.
Oh wow, that's definitely great information to hear and stuff. And another thing, as far as I'm concerned, your expertise is that you honestly brought to my attention, the haunted items that a lot of people didn't believe. Oh, how can that be haunted?
Mm-hmm. It's not anything new. It really isn't anything earth-shattering, as far as I've been concerned, because it's always existed. I mean, gosh, one of my very first cases, going way back, with Ed and Lorraine, dealt with a haunted item. And once that occurred and that happened, that's when I started researching and started digging into, getting my hands on books, because back then we didn't have the internet or anything, on haunted items and cursed objects and cursed property. And the more you get into it, you realize that these things date back hundreds of years that they occur. And I thought it, was important to try and get it out into the forefront as far as, we have haunted land, haunted people, haunted houses. Why isn't it brought out to the forefront about haunted and cursed items?
Yes, and that's the one thing myself and a lot of other people respect you for, is you brought that to the forefront. You, again, weren't like your uncle. You both not afraid to speak your mind, both not to come and say, hey, look, this is another avenue. This is something else people should be aware of.
Absolutely. And again, you look at it just like anything else. Once you go out into the forefront, you're going to get criticized. You're going to have 1,000,001 people come up with so many different stories and different things. But I look back on it, the 3 seasons of doing the TV show, it opened up a lot. It got people to understand and comprehend that these things do occur. They do happen. Haunted items are just as prominent as haunted locations out there worldwide. So again, something to me on a positive came out of doing the show is the fact that people gained a lot of knowledge off of it and understanding on how some of these things can and do affect people.
Yeah, and one thing I will say from experience, I experienced firsthand, is anybody that tried, to criticize, you heard things about the show, is we both did the Deep River Public Library.
Mm-hmm.
And I was actually investigated there 10 days before you went there to film the show. Mm-hmm. And probably a few months after it aired, I said, maybe I'd like to go back. And I contacted the source there, and she was like, nope. She goes, since, John took that typewriter out, it's been nice, it's been quiet, the kids have been not scared, the staff hasn't been scared. So I could say firsthand that items can be haunted, because she told me everything's better, and since then there's been no activity there.
Well, again, too, a lot of times you have to remember when you do that, when you deal with these public locations and things, there was a lot more things that I did behind the scenes, Chris. I mean, there were definitely clearings, there were different rituals and things that were performed. There had been spiritual people that had been brought into a lot of these locations, and different things have been done to be able to rectify some of the paranormal activity. It was just a very unfortunate thing that they chose not to air a lot of that in the episodes, which bothered me, because I wish it was there, because it would help people to get a better understanding, once the item was removed, boom, no, everything just wasn't all set and done. Many of the investigations that I was involved with on the show, I did follow up with the people, and there were things put into place afterwards to try and help the individuals out to get some of the paranormal activity to stop, or hopefully to get everything totally resolved.
Yes, and like we said, everything you've done to back up what we said, from start to finish, you followed through and the activity at the library ceased. So, again, experience and training and object, everything you did, they're happy. And that's, I think, the end goal.
Well, I think it is. I honestly feel, you do have people that want things resolved, whether we're dealing with commercial property or residential property. They would prefer to have everything, totally resolved, and I think each and every one of us strives for that. But on the flip side of it, as we all know, a lot of these places embrace the paranormal today, and when embracing it doesn't necessarily always mean to me that it's going to be a bad thing. I mean, a lot of these historical places out there today count on us coming, count on us doing the, events there, because it does raise money, and it helps them to do work. It helps them to maintain and keep these places going. That's why a lot of times, you look at the big picture and you look at what's going on, and knowing, just researching into a piece of public, a commercial piece of property, what it's going to cost just to be able to maintain that, it's astronomical, between insurances and what you have to do as far as the utilities, and it's monumental. So again, that's why I embrace a lot of them out there today, that they're trying to keep it going. They're doing what they can to raise money, and one of the ways they do that is, by paranormal people coming in, doing investigations, doing the TV shows, or, doing events at these locations. It helps them to raise money to be able to keep these places going.
Oh, yeah, and that's, a lot of people don't see it that way, and that's why we all, as you say, do these events, because like you were saying earlier, that mansion that burnt, we want to see these locations, and that's the thing, people got to respect these locations, and too much history, it's going down way too quick, whether it's vandalism or development.
Well, again, too, that's the whole thing, and, you go, you have to respect the properties, whether it's private property or, something that's opened up, like one of the prisons or the old hospitals and things like that. And you have to realize in the background, what that excess damage can do to these locations, and the harm that it's going to cause, that somebody, bought a piece of property and they're doing all these things, and they're trying to keep that piece of historical property going instead of it being demolished.
Yeah, and that's sadly the two thing that's going on. So, I know I got a lot of time, but two more quick questions that I'm pretty sure everybody would want to know. Is there one item at your museum that you're just like, you love to talk about, that's from a case that was the most active, or?
Well, I think the one that, it's so hard because so many of them come from different perspectives. I think the one item that probably means the most to me is the little Virgin Mary statue from a haunting in Connecticut. When the exorcism was being performed, and 3 Roman Catholic priests were sanctioned, they were in there, and they did perform it, the hands of the statue literally had melted off, and the priest wouldn't even touch it. He didn't even want anything to do with it whatsoever. And the bizarre thing with it, Chris, is after everything was all said and done, for about 10 years, I never thought about it, never gave it any, it was just something I never thought about. And at one point in time, after Carmen's children were grown, that's when Carmen went public, after they were grown and out of school, because she didn't want them to have to go through any crap in school. Her and I were getting together to do an event the first time in 10 years, and she said, I have something I want to give to you. She said, I want you to put it in your paranormal barn that you have. And she took it out and she opened it up. It was in 2 Virgin Mary statue, and I was shocked. I said, I did not know you kept that all these years. And she goes, I did. And she goes, now it's time to go with you. And that to me, it's more of the personal items that mean more to me than anything else. Different things that my uncle had given me, over the course of the years. Things like that mean more to me than, anything else, really.
Oh, wow. Now, what have you ever had, like, what investigation would you say the most that you were, not say scared, but on edge about, like, that you got most startled?
Well, again, that would be the Pat Reading case that I worked on for 4 years. And it took 16 exorcisms to free Pat Reading. It was probably one of the most intense cases, and each and every time that you went to this home, there was always activity going on. Something was happening. Robert Bishop McKenna, there were several priests involved with this. There were so many people involved with that case, and each time that Pat Reading would go under possession, you would see this little tiny woman gain an enormous amount of strength, and she would have all kinds of knowledge. And some of the things that occurred and happened, she did not fit the MO. She just didn't. And it was probably one of those most monumental cases with seeing activity, experiencing things, and working with so many different spiritual people on that case is one that made me really take that step back and go, you know what? It makes no sense here. Why this woman had fallen victim to this. She never got involved with anything. She never practiced anything. She was into planting flowers, raising her family. She just didn't fit the MO. None of it fit the MO on why this all occurred. So to me, that's probably one of the most scariest. And I will say scary because there were times I would leave working that investigation. We deal with so many different things that most people don't experience, most people don't even witness, let alone fathom the fact that an individual can really go through this and they're not crazy and they're not mental. I mean, there was all kinds of evaluations on the woman, you name it, and this woman went through the ringer before the Roman Catholic Church literally got involved with it. So again, very monumental as far as a case with the intensity and the amount of things that occurred in it.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's kind of, reminds me real quick about, I won't say the name of the road, but that house in Bridgeport, back in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
And, your uncle and Lorraine and, people thought, they're crazy until a police officer who happened to be an uncle of a friend of mine walked in, opened the door, and swore there was stuff literally flying all around the house.
Again, with the case that, I know it's the Gooden family. I mean, it's a public case out there. Lindley Street, the Lindley Street case, that's the one you were to, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Again, monumental. And I think I was 16 years old, and I remember going and trying to get through the crowds. There were thousands and thousands of people out in front of that house. The police put barricades up and everything else. My uncle was going to let me go into the house, but at that point, Lorraine had basically piped up and said, she goes, he's not prepared for this. And I never literally got into the home, but I still remember people coming out of there and the looks on their faces. It was a couple of police officers and a couple of other people that came out, and just totally amazing. And recently, I just had heard, you just triggered something else. The mom and dad had passed away. The Goodens had passed away, but I recently had heard that the daughter, Marcia, had passed away within the past year. So again, that's one of those cases where all the individuals that were involved with it had passed away.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I wasn't even aware of that. I just remember that was, and still is, one of the most talked about cases, here in Connecticut.
Yes, it sure is. And, again, you look at these situations situations, and that was something monumental, groundbreaking, if you will, on the amount of paranormal activity. We know it was poltergeist. We know it was centered around the young girl, on the amount of energy that she was tapped in and causing a lot of these things to occur and happen. But the same thing with me, Chris, over the course of years, talking to people that were in there, police officers and different people during the investigation, and they all, the majority of them would say the same thing. There was something going on in there. There were things moving. There was things occurring in there that I can't explain. So again, those are things that I always look at and listen to, is when people make statements to me like that about an investigation out there.
Yeah, great. Well, in closing, John, what advice would you give to anybody looking to get into this field?
Take your time. Always take your time getting involved with anything you do. Do your research. Try to work with people that are established, that have been in the field. It's most important that if you do start working on cases from a negative perspective, that you start working with spiritual people. I work with Buddhists, rabbis, ministers, priests, you name it, and I've worked with them over the years. But you can't just pick up the telephone call. You can't just pick up the phone and call a priest or something and expect them to go out. You have to build relationships with these people. They have to trust you just as much as you have to trust them. So again, that's something I feel the paranormal community has to understand today, that there isn't just you don't just dial 911 exorcist and you're going to get a priest to run out to that house. It's not going to happen on any level with spiritual people. It's just like any other profession out there. You have to build your relationships. You have to build the trust with each other to be able to call up, say Father Mike, and say, Father Mike, I think this is a legit situation, and give them that information. Because I know if I was a priest and you called me up and said, I'm working at a haunted house and these people are possessed, we need you to get over here and do an exorcism. No, I wouldn't just jump into something like that. That priest doesn't know what he's going to be getting himself involved with.
Yeah, and that's excellent points.
Yeah, so again, take your time, just like anything else you're trying to study and learn out there, regardless of what it is. You have to build those relationships. You have to build your reputation, and it's a key factor, and it's very important to be able to do that.
Oh, okay, great. Well, again, John, I definitely appreciate your time, and I know you got things to do. But we'll definitely be in touch, and once again, thank you for your time and the advice that everyone hopefully will take in the hand.
All right, my friend, it was good to talk to you, and I do have to run here, and we'll be catching up soon, man.
All right, take it easy, John.
Okay, Chris.
Bye-bye.